Welcome, caring viewers, to Planet Earth, our loving home. To raise awareness of the profound and devastating environmental effects of livestock raising, the UK-based non-profit group Compassion in World Farming hosted a lecture and panel discussion on the topic in London, England. The event, held in September 2008, brought together over 400 participants from government, the diplomatic sector, think tanks and research organizations. Panel participants featured Dr. Henning Steinfeld, Chief Livestock Specialist of the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization and co-author of the well-known 2006 United Nations report, Livestock's Long Shadow, Environmental Issues and Options. The panel also included Dr. Robert Watson, Chief Scientist of Britain's Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, Felicity Lawrence, British author of best-selling books on the food industry, Professor John Poles, Senior Lecturer in Public Health Medicine at Cambridge University, England, and Compassion in World Farming's farm animal welfare expert, Joyce De Silva. The lecture, entitled Global Warming, the Impact of Meat Production and Consumption on Climate Change, was given by the esteemed Dr. Rajendra Pachauri, Chair of the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and a vegetarian. Media reports on the role of meat consumption in driving climate change have increased significantly since Dr. Pachauri's call in 2008 for the world to eat less meat to counter global warming. In honor of Earth Day, we now feature excerpts from Dr. Pachauri's compelling talk.
What I'm going to do to start with is give you a few major findings from the fourth assessment report of the IPCC, and then I'll deal with the subject of consumption of meat and its role in contributing to emissions of greenhouse gases, and then talk about a few means by which we should bring about a reduction. This is just a view of changes that have taken place, and these are observed changes in global average temperature, global average sea level, and northern hemisphere snow cover. And you'd notice over here that this record of temperature changes, starting with the beginning of industrialization, has had obvious ups and downs, and that's essentially because changes have taken place both as a result of natural factors as well as human-induced factors. But what is particularly significant is that in recent decades, you see that the increase in temperature has been much steeper than in previous decades. And therefore, and I'll say a little more about this later, it's largely the result of human contributions to the concentration of greenhouse gases that you find this rapid increase in temperatures that's taken place in recent decades. And if one looks at the total increase, the average increase during the 20th century, it amounted to about 0.74 degrees Celsius. Corresponding to that, the middle diagram gives you global average sea level changes. And this, if I might mention, during the 20th century amounted to about 17 centimeters. Now, you could say 17 centimeters is not a lot, but if you're living in the Maldives Islands or, on the low-lying country of Bangladesh, then 17 centimeters, which is pretty close to a foot, is really a lot. You don't even have to wait till inundation of that entire land area takes place as a result of sea level rise, but purely because of coastal flooding, because of storm surges, cyclones, there would be much greater devastation that would take place on account of a higher sea. Northern hemisphere snow cover has been going down, and you see this particularly in the case of the Arctic region, which is warming at about twice the rate of the rest of the globe. Now, in the fourth assessment report, we've come up with projections of temperature increases by the end of this century, and naturally based on scenarios of economic growth, technology changes, and other factors, there's a whole range of outcomes that one can project. And corresponding to that, we get a range of these temperature increases by the end of the century, right from 1.1 degrees Celsius to 6.4 degrees Celsius. But we've come up with two so-called best estimates, one at the lower end, which we estimated at 1.8 degrees Celsius, and at the upper end, about 4 degrees Celsius. I might say that even the 1.8 degree Celsius increase does provide some cause for alarm, because that, combined with the 0.74 degree increase that took place in the 20th century, would add up to over 2.5 degrees Celsius. And in looking at the impacts of climate change, we have now come to the conclusion that a 2.5 degree increase in temperature will cause impacts that clearly would be quite unacceptable on any basis whatsoever, particularly on the basis of equity, because some of the worst affected regions in the world are those that are hardly responsible for having caused the problem. And these are regions where you have widespread poverty, there's absolutely no infrastructure or capacity by which they might be able to withstand the impacts of climate change. So the point I'm trying to make is that we really have to do something about the current trends, and we have to bring about some major changes by which we can take care of the future of this planet.
You are watching Planet Earth, Our Loving Home, on Supreme Master Television. Please stay tuned, we'll be right back.